My wife took a break to find herself until I uncovered her secret online relationship when she first said she needed a break. I thought she just needed some time to clear her head. I didn't think much of it. I mean, we'd been married for 8 years, and lately, things had been strained. Work stress, the kids, and the usual grind. She said she felt lost, like she didn't know who she was anymore. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. I told her to take all the time she needed, that I'd be here when she was ready. I thought it was about self-discovery, about finding peace, about rediscovering the parts of herself she'd buried under motherhood and marriage. But I was wrong. The truth came crashing down on me slowly. It started with the little things: her phone always locked, her laptop shut tight whenever I was near, the way she would suddenly become distant during conversations, her eyes darting away when I tried to meet her gaze. I tried not to let it bother me. I told myself maybe she just needed privacy. Maybe this was part of her journey. But the doubt was there. A small seed planted deep in my gut, growing with every secret glance and missed call. One night, after the kids were asleep, I saw her phone buzz on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up with a message preview, a name I didn't recognize, and words that made my heart stop. "Can't wait to talk to you again." My mind raced. I picked up the phone carefully, debating whether to respect her privacy or confront the suspicion gnawing at me. In a moment of weakness, I unlocked it. What I found shattered everything I thought I knew. There were messages, photos, video calls, all with someone named Mark, someone who wasn't me. They weren't just casual chats. They were intimate, emotional, and frequent. She was sharing things with him I hadn't heard in years: her fears, her dreams, her frustrations. I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. I confronted her the next day. She broke down crying, begging me to understand that she didn't mean to hurt me, that it was just someone she connected with while feeling loss, that it was her way of coping. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to fix it. But the betrayal was raw and deep. How do you rebuild trust when the person you love is hiding a part of themselves and someone else from you? That break she asked for wasn't about finding herself. It was about escaping us. And now, I'm left trying to pick up the pieces of a life I thought was ours. After that day, everything felt different. Our home, which once was a place of comfort and laughter, suddenly felt cold and unfamiliar. I kept replaying the messages in my mind, the words she shared with Mark, the secrets she hid from me. It was as if a part of her had disappeared, replaced by someone I didn't know. We tried to talk, but every conversation ended in tears or silence. She apologized endlessly, saying she never intended to hurt me, that she felt alone, misunderstood, and afraid. She said Mark was just a friend at first, someone she met online who listened to her when she felt invisible. But those lines blurred quickly, and soon it became clear to both of us that it wasn't just friendship. I wanted to understand, to find a way back to the woman I married. But the more I tried, the more the distance between us seemed to grow. I found myself watching her closely, searching for signs of affection or remorse, but often, I saw only guilt and confusion. Nights were the hardest. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering where I went wrong. Was I too busy with work? Had I stopped being attentive enough? Or was this simply the inevitable unraveling of something we both neglected? The kids sensed the tension too. They asked why Mommy seemed sad, why Daddy and Mommy weren't talking as much. Their innocent questions broke my heart, reminding me of what was truly at stake. Despite the pain, I knew I had to decide what came next. Forgiveness seemed impossible, yet the thought of losing her was unbearable. I wanted to believe in us, but trust was shattered, like glass scattered across the floor, impossible to piece back together perfectly. One evening, I found her sitting alone on the porch, the twilight casting soft shadows around her. She looked at me, her eyes filled with sorrow and longing. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. "I'm scared, but I want to fight for us." That moment was fragile, the thread of hope in the wreckage. We agreed to seek counseling, to try and understand not just the affair, but the cracks that led us there. It was grueling. Therapy sessions forced us to confront uncomfortable truths and buried resentments. Sometimes it felt like progress, other times like we were digging a deeper hole. Slowly, we started to talk again, really talk. About our fears, our dreams, and the loneliness we both felt even when together. Rebuilding wasn't easy. Some nights, old wounds bled anew. But in those moments, I realized that healing isn't about forgetting the past, it's about learning how to live with it and still choose each other every day. Today, we're not perfect. The scars remain, reminders of pain and betrayal. But there's also growth, resilience, and a cautious optimism. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm choosing to hope. Choosing to believe that even after the deepest hurt, love can find its way if both hearts are willing to fight for it. The counseling sessions became our lifeline. At first, walking into the therapist's office felt like admitting defeat, but soon, it became a space where honesty was allowed, where walls came down, and real conversations could finally begin. She talked about feeling trapped, overwhelmed by expectations as a wife, a mother, and a woman trying to find herself. I shared my pain, the feeling of being blindsided by someone I trusted completely. We both realized that somewhere along the way, we stopped truly seeing each other. It was a painful reckoning. We had to face the loneliness we both felt even when we were together. The silent dinners, the missed hugs, the nights spent scrolling on our phones instead of talking. Rebuilding trust meant more than just apologies. It meant creating new patterns of small gestures of openness and vulnerability. It meant her answering my questions honestly, even when it hurt, and me trying to listen without judgment. There were setbacks. Days when the old wounds felt fresh and the bitterness bubbled to the surface. But then there were moments of tenderness with touch, a shared laugh, a memory revisited with warmth instead of pain. We began to spend time intentionally, rediscovering the simple joy of being together. Walks in the park, cooking meals side by side, watching movies without distractions. Slowly, the walls started to crumble. Yet, I knew healing wasn't linear. I still struggled with jealousy and doubt. The fear that it could happen again lingered like a shadow. Sometimes, I caught myself scrutinizing her phone or questioning her late nights. But every time those feelings surfaced, I reminded myself of the work we were doing, the commitment we made to each other to rebuild, not to repeat. I also realized that forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's a choice to let go of the anger that eats away at your soul, to make peace with the past so it doesn't dictate your future. In time, our intimacy returned not just physically, but emotionally. We began to share hopes and fears again. She opened up about her struggles with identity and self-worth, and I shared my vulnerabilities too. What once felt like a fragile thread grew stronger with each honest conversation. Looking back, I don't think the break was just about her finding herself, it was about both of us confronting who we'd become and deciding what kind of future we wanted. It wasn't easy. It still isn't. But I believe now, more than ever, that love can survive the hardest trials if nurtured with patience, empathy, and truth. And while the scars of betrayal remain, they no longer define us. They remind us instead of how far we've come. As the months went by, we started involving the kids more openly in our healing process, not the details, of course, but the atmosphere at home began to shift. The tension that had once filled the rooms eased, replaced slowly by laughter and lightness. The kids noticed it too. Their smiles became brighter, their questions fewer, as they felt the change in the air. Rebuilding our family wasn't just about repairing my marriage, it was about creating a new foundation for all of us, a foundation built on honesty, respect, and patience. We set new boundaries, especially around technology and communication. No more secrets behind locked screens. We promised transparency, even when it was uncomfortable. She deleted the contacts that had threatened our marriage, and together, we worked on building back the trust she had fractured. I also realized I needed to grow not just as a husband, but as a man. I started therapy on my own, confronting my own fears, insecurities, and the ways I might have contributed to the distance between us. It wasn't about blaming, it was about understanding and evolving. Slowly, I discovered parts of myself I'd neglected, the parts that craved connection, emotional openness, and forgiveness. It was liberating and terrifying all at once. We made space for each other's growth. She explored new hobbies, went back to school part-time, and started therapy herself. I cheered her on, proud of the woman who was reclaiming her identity while still standing beside me. There were moments when old wounds threatened to resurface, a misplaced word, a shadow of doubt, but we faced those moments together. Sometimes we cried, sometimes we argued, but always, we came back to the table. One evening, as we sat watching our kids play in the backyard, she reached over and took my hand. No words were necessary. That simple touch spoke volumes, a promise that, despite everything, we were still partners, still fighting for the life we dreamed of. I won't pretend the scars are gone. They aren't. But they have become a part of our story, a story not just of pain and betrayal, but of resilience and renewal. Today, I look at my wife and see not only the woman who made mistakes, but the woman who is brave enough to face them, to grow from them, and to choose love every day. And I see myself not perfect, but willing to forgive, willing to heal, and willing to build a future stronger than our past. Because in the end, that's what love really is, a choice. Every single day. As time went on, I realized that healing wasn't just about fixing what was broken between us, it was about becoming whole individually. The betrayal had forced me to confront parts of myself I'd been ignoring, my own fears of abandonment, my tendencies to withdraw instead of communicate, and the walls I had unknowingly built around my heart. She was growing too. The woman who once felt lost was now carving out space for herself, and in doing so, she wasn't pulling away from me anymore, she was inviting me to join her. We started sharing dreams again, small ones at first, a weekend getaway, a dinner without distractions, a renewed promise to listen better. Those moments, simple as they were, felt revolutionary after the storm we had weathered. I began to appreciate the power of vulnerability, not as a weakness, but as the strongest bridge between two people. When she opened up about her fears and insecurities, I listened without judgment, and when I shared my own, she held the space for me without blame. It wasn't perfect. Trust once broken is fragile, and every day demanded effort and patience. But with each honest conversation and each act of kindness, the cracks in our foundation began to mend. Our relationship transformed from one built on routine to one forged in intentional connection. We learned to celebrate each other's growth, to forgive ourselves for mistakes, and to face the future together, not as perfect partners, but as imperfect souls choosing love. Looking back, the break she asked for, the one that led to the online affair, was a painful catalyst for this transformation. What once seemed like an end became a beginning. We are still on this journey, but now I walk it with hope instead of fear. Because sometimes, losing your way is the only way to truly find yourself, and the love you thought was gone. There were days when the past would creep back in, uninvited. A certain look, a forgotten phrase, or a sudden silence would send my mind racing, replaying those messages and moments of betrayal. Sometimes, the pain would surge up like a wave, threatening to pull me under. But over time, I learned to breathe through it, to hold onto the reality of who we were becoming rather than who we had been. I noticed that forgiveness wasn't a one-time event but a daily choice. Each morning, I had to remind myself why I was choosing to stay, to trust again, and to believe in her. And she, too, had to face her own battles, the guilt, the self-doubt, and the effort to prove her commitment beyond words. We made new rituals, morning coffees shared in silence, late-night talks under dim lights, and small surprises that reminded us of the affection we once took for granted. It was these moments that stitched our lives back together, thread by thread. Sometimes, friends asked how we managed to survive such a storm. I told them it was about honesty, brutal honesty, and a willingness to look beyond hurt toward healing. It was about both of us refusing to give up on something worth fighting for. Our kids blossomed in this new environment. The tension that had clouded our home lifted, replaced by warmth and security. They didn't understand every detail, but they felt the change, and their laughter returned. I won't lie and say everything is perfect. Trust, once fractured, leaves scars. There are still moments of doubt and fear. But now, those moments are tempered with compassion and a deeper understanding of each other. I've learned that love is not just about the good times, it's about weathering the storms together, growing through the pain, and choosing to hold on when letting go feels easier. My wife and I are still healing, still growing, and still learning to be partners in the truest sense of the word. And every day, that feels like a victory. A full year passed from the day I first found those messages. It's strange how time can both dull and sharpen pain. Some days I would forget, even if only briefly. I'd look at her across the dinner table while the kids chattered away and feel peace. Then something small would happen, a delayed text reply, an odd expression on her face, and my stomach would twist with a memory I thought I'd buried. But the difference now was what came next. We talked. Not perfectly, not always gently, but truthfully. I no longer let my fear grow in silence. She no longer shut me out when I asked hard questions. We had both learned the cost of avoidance. The affair had broken us, but in its aftermath, we were becoming something we'd never been before, real. Stripped of illusion, of assumptions, of all the quiet resentments that used to go unspoken. There were still nights I lay awake wondering if I had made the right choice staying. And I know she had her own version of that doubt too. But those thoughts no longer controlled us. I remember one evening in particular. We were in the kitchen, cooking dinner together. Nothing special. Just pasta. She was chopping garlic, and I was stirring the sauce, and suddenly she looked up at me and said, "I know I hurt you more than I can ever make up for. But you stayed. And I don't go a single day without being thankful that you gave me another chance." I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at her. For the first time in a long time, I saw not the woman who betrayed me, but the woman who was still standing beside me after everything we'd endured, by her choice and by mine. I didn't stay because I forgot what happened, I finally said. I stayed because I still saw the person you could be. And I think you're becoming her. That moment wasn't dramatic. No music, no fireworks. Just two people who had been through hell, still willing to rebuild a life together one honest moment at a time. We stopped trying to recreate what we had before. That marriage was gone. Instead, we built something new, something messier, perhaps, but more authentic. More resilient. She still has her therapy sessions, so do I. We talk openly about our needs, our triggers, our fears. We don't pretend to be perfect. But we show up. Some of our friends drifted away. Not everyone understands what it takes to forgive something so raw. But the ones who stayed, the ones who witnessed our pain and didn't flinch, they became family. And through it all, I found something I didn't expect, a deeper version of myself. A man who doesn't run from hard truths, who isn't afraid to admit he was shattered, who knows now that love isn't about never being broken, it's about what you do afterward. If you had asked me a year ago whether we'd still be together, I wouldn't have had an answer. But today, when I look at her, I see the truth. We didn't survive because we forgot. We survived because we remembered and still chose each other. It's been 3 years now. If you were to meet us today, see us at a friend's barbecue, or walking through the park hand in hand, you might never guess what we went through. You'd see two people smiling, laughing at an inside joke, sharing glances that say, "We've been through it all." But under those smiles are the layers only we know. The pain, the shame, the effort, the forgiveness. And the choice. Always the choice. We don't pretend anymore. Not with each other, not even with those closest to us. We're honest about what we endured, not because we want sympathy, but because we believe there's strength in truth. People carry so much silently, marriages that are crumbling behind Instagram filters, families barely holding together while smiling at birthday parties. We were almost one of those, but instead, we chose to face it. She tells me often that she feels like a different person now, that she sometimes doesn't recognize the woman who made those choices, who stepped outside our marriage for validation, thinking someone across a screen had the answers to the emptiness she didn't know how to name. I tell her I feel different too. Stronger, softer in some ways, harder in others. I'm no longer afraid to speak up about what I need. I no longer think that silence is strength. And I've learned painfully, but deeply, that love isn't about keeping score. It's about keeping faith, even when you're on your knees. There are still reminders. Once in a while, I'll see something on her phone or hear a phrase that triggers a memory. But instead of spiraling, I breathe. We talk. We hold hands through it. And it passes. The kids are older now. They don't know the details, they don't need to, but they know mom and dad had a hard time and worked through it. And I think, in a way, that lesson is more valuable than a fairy tale romance ever could be. They're growing up understanding that relationships take work, and that forgiveness is powerful, but not automatic. It has to be earned. We've made new memories now. Real ones. Trips we never took before. Late nights spent talking about the future instead of arguing about the past. And sometimes, we just sit in silence on the couch, content, finally at peace with where we are. People sometimes ask if I've truly forgiven her. And the answer is yes. Not because I forgot. Not because what she did didn't break me. But because forgiveness was the only way to be free for both of us. Holding onto that pain wouldn't have kept her accountable. It would have just kept me imprisoned in a past I couldn't change. So yes, I forgave her. And in doing so, I gave myself a second chance to. We're not who we used to be. We're something better, real, and perfect, and breakable in a way we never were before. If I could go back, would I stop it all from happening? Honestly, I don't know. Because as much as it hurt, it forced us to see each other again, not as the versions we'd grown used to, but as the flawed, evolving humans we truly are. And that kind of love. It's not easy. It's not shiny. But it's true. And that, I've learned, is more than enough.